Are you stuck below 1500 and don't know the difference between tactics and calculation? Then this video is for you. In this video, I will show you what the difference between tactics and calculation is and what steps you need to apply to advance to the next level. So I will show you a set of examples and explain to you how a person who does not know calculation will approach it and a person who knows about calculation will approach it. So we will start from a very common position from the fried liver attack. Black has just jumped to d4 with the knight, and maybe you are wondering, is there already some tactics working for white? And you should wonder this, and I also wondered this once, but it doesn't quite work. And we will first see which kind of tactic is lying in the air, but as a fried liver attack player, you should see, okay, maybe there is something against f7 and there is a pawn in the way, so we could consider pawn to d6. And now I want to show you the way an unexperienced player or beginner would approach this. Is like, okay, I can go here, he kind of takes it and I fork him and I win. And that's usually the way people think when they have no clue about calculation. They see one tactical motive and they get enthusiastic about it and they think it's just winning, not considering a lot of important things. The important things you need to consider when we are talking about calculation is not only if there is a tactic, but if the tactic actually works. And that depends on a lot of things, which is, are there any counter tactics? Does the material gained actually win the game, or will I suffer from some other damages in my position? And yeah, we will go through that. So when you are confronted with such a move like d6 as black, you should not panic and see, oh, there might be a tactic. I need to defend it like at all cost and play bishop e6 or knight to e6 immediately, because that would actually again be like the beginner mindset, just seeing a tactic and thinking a tactic is always good, I need to prevent it at all cost. The more advanced player who is familiar with the concept of calculation would first consider his own capture and try to see if he can make this work, and it actually works. So after queen d6, the only real idea for white would be this fork. Of course, we can also discuss like, what if he takes with the bishop? That's actually better. But after bishop f7 and bishop goes back, white has not won any material, needs to give up the pair of bishops here, and black gets sufficient counterplay. So we will for now focus on this tactics, which is not winning the game, but instead losing the game. And that's where calculation comes in. It is not about just seeing one motive, but evaluating the motive, combining motives, and evaluating the arising position. So here black has a strong counter, which is not a check and a capture, but a slow move. And that's also something you learn when you really learn to calculate, that you also can spot some hidden ideas which don't take something or check something immediately. So if you want to challenge yourself about this, now I already told you there is something, try to go slow and try to find some counter for black. And we will continue with the solution, which is queen to c6. This is very strong, saving the queen, but not only saving the queen, but also hitting this bishop. And now we need to calculate a few lines. And that's where, again, tactics and calculation go a bit hand in hand. So we, of course, need to know tactics in order to do calculation. For example, here we do a double attack, but it's not just seeing a double attack and judging it's winning, but then go deeper and really think about what's happening there, calculate. So we will do this together for now. So the first line I would check is, What if he takes anyway? And actually in this line I was happy enough to take here because I thought the knight here in the center, in the corner, is doomed. And black is just better as he will get the knight as well later and have two pieces for the rook. But there is actually a stronger continuation with queen to g2, hitting this rook. And after rook to f1, we get this very traditional mate. If bishop e2, we have knight f3 mating. And if queen e2, white would just drop the queen and lose the game. So knight h8 doesn't really work. This rook is just lost, or there will be this mating attack. Also, we need to take care of his checks, but it's just leading nowhere. So let's see what else he could try. White could also try to castle, but in this line we can take. And if knight takes, we again will win this knight. This needs a little experience, but usually those knights don't get out, and you can really count on winning them later. And really, white is not an exchange up, but I would say rather material down, because he will lose a second piece for the rook he gained. So what did we learn from this example? Basically, I would say you should know by now that even though you spot a tactical motive, you're not winning the game immediately. You need to evaluate it. You need to look for counter tactics. You also need to include some silent ideas, and you need to judge the outcome. If there is a fork, but 2 moves later there will be a bigger counter fork or a mating attack against you, it doesn't help you. So don't become too enthusiastic about some tactical shots. Of course, tactics is still the basis of everything, but you should, when you go to the next level, be able to really judge the tactics and their outcome. Let's now have a look at another example to deepen our understanding of the whole concepts. So this time we will start from this position, looking from the black side, and white continued with queen d2, which is actually a mistake. And you can try to figure out why this is a mistake, try to find some tactical idea, but then not just say I'm winning, but try to make the details work, look for counter chances, and really calculate it out. So we will continue, and the best move here is knight takes e4. The tactical idea being, if he takes, I take, king takes, and I will win back the piece on d4, having won a pawn in the center. So like this, and no counters, nothing. However, rushing like this would not be well calculated, and you should not be too happy if that's everything you did. But instead we need to look for counters. Is there any counter what he can do? Of course, it seems like impossible, but because the white queen is hit, yeah, what should he do? But actually there is something, and something which is very crucial to calculate, which is knight takes c6. The idea is simply get rid of this knight, because this was the knight white was losing back in the end, and once this knight is gone, white is just threatening to take the piece. Okay, and now this is the calculation point. You can pause here and try to find the only winning move for black here, as this is very crucial, as otherwise even white would be winning. So again, look for your options, look for the ideas, be careful, not be too enthusiastic about the first thing you see. Yeah. So there might be several tries, like all the captures, like taking the queen, taking the knight, taking the knight, taking the knight, or taking the knight. So a lot of things to consider, and we just need to go through all of them in a systematic way, which is sometimes key in calculation. So first, we can exclude those because our knight would drop and we wouldn't get the piece in return. That's kind of easy enough. Let's next try to capture his queen, but unfortunately we lose our queen as well, and this bishop would be guarded by the knight. So this is of course a line you should calculate, but it's actually not working because this knight is dropping and this bishop is currently defended by the white knight. And if we want to hit the white knight, he will take our knight. So there is basically nothing here. So the same goes for knight to c3. The queen would just drop. Bishop c3 is more interesting. And I actually need to think about it myself. It doesn't work because again white takes here and it's too much material here. White is currently a queen up, so black needs to take the queen, but after that white will have an extra piece here. In this situation bishop d2 or also b2 c3 would have won. So as you can see, it's not so easy and it's not so obvious that this knight e4 works, because after knight c6 we need to have some detail prepared, and that's what calculation is about. Not just one idea, but really evaluate, is it working or not. Actually the winning move here is queen takes c3. This is maybe very hard to see from far ahead, but the point is just this queen was attacked anyway, so it doesn't really matter if it's taken on a5 or on c3. But on c3 the queen took a whole knight, which is a lot of material, and also this knight won't jump to a5, take the queen and save itself. So after queen takes c3, white has no way to avoid the queen trade. The white queen is hanging anyway, so white better trades here. But after bishop takes with check, the most forcing, pawn takes, and now either pawn takes on c6, black is indeed a whole pawn up and much better. So black gets a much better position, not yet winning, but much better for him with this move knight e4. But what you need to do is really calculate it out. Otherwise, it's just hoping for some tricks, and maybe there are some counters which make your opponent beat you if you are not careful with this. So keep this in mind, and we will have a look at the third example, which is this one. So we start from the Sicilian defense. Open Sicilian, classical Sicilian, bishop g5, e6, f4, which is inaccurate. Again, we will look from the black side. h6, bishop goes to h4, bishop to e7, and queen d2. And at this point you can try to look for some tactical motive, which is the basic thing we need to do, but then go as deep as possible and really try to calculate and evaluate the tactics. Try to be systematic, try not to miss any of your opponent's ideas, and we will continue with the solution. So the tactics is, of course, that's the only thing which is there in the position, connected with this discovered attack and the loose queen on d2. So knight e4 is the move to go. And now this variation is very simple to calculate. We just take with check and then return. There is no real target, so black is just probably winning here. But of course we need to understand, is there any counter idea by our opponent? So the best is bishop e7. Against everything else we can simply take this bishop with a check or take the queen. But here we need to calculate. Should we take here or should we take here? And this has basically nothing to do with tactics, because it's just calculating it out, considering checks and captures in a systematic way. It's not about forks or any fancy motives anymore. It's just about going through the lines. So let's do this. We have, in my opinion, 2 or 3 candidates. Like we could take here or we could take on d2. But this line can be calculated quite easily, as after knight e4 we are just a piece down. So probably we should consider taking on d2. Then he also needs to take our queen. That's why this is very forcing. And after that we need to also keep always track of the number of pieces. So if we take here and he takes here, we are a piece down and we need to take care that we get it back. So do you find a move where we get the piece back? There are actually two good moves here, and you should be able to find at least one of them. And the way I want to go here is knight takes f1. We take this bishop, and at the same time we also keep in mind that our knight might get out in case he gets out with his bishop. Also, his knight on d4 is still loose. So probably, since he doesn't want to lose a piece, he could trade on this knight. Now we need still to make sure that this knight is getting out at least as easily as this bishop. So if he takes the knight, we take the bishop, that's fine, but maybe there is some try where he can save the bishop, but we cannot save the knight. So that's a danger we need to be aware of, and that's some kind of deep calculation. You really need to figure it out deeply, because otherwise you might have won a pawn, but if you lose the knight in the end, it's all worthless. So he could try to get the bishop out in several ways, but the most dangerous one, in my opinion, is the one with a threat, which is bishop to c7. All the other bishop moves, they're not threatening anything, and the knight will jump here, and after that he has several escapes, which is basically enough to see. So after bishop c7, we need to take a bit of care, as something like king d7 would allow some counter tactic, like bishop d6, regaining the pawn. Because, yeah, if king takes, white would take the knight, and he is no longer a pawn down. So we need to be aware of that and consider our options. Is it possible maybe to create a counter threat, save the knight, and actually there is knight to e3, hitting the c2, so there is no time to take the d6 pawn. And now after king to d2, for example, now we can safely play king d7, as bishop d6 would run into the fork. And if he does take our knight now, then we take the bishop without the bishop having gained a pawn on d6. So that's a very deep line, and you need good visualization for it. And you also need to be aware that it's not just that simple that there is an idea and it works anyway. I mean, there could be some minor difference to the position. For example, the bishop being here, and suddenly if the bishop was on e2, all this line might possibly not work, because this knight might not be able to take a whole piece on f1, which might be a crucial difference. So it's again about evaluating all the nuances of the position and really going through the variations, evaluate it, not just see a discovered attack and saying, okay, I'm winning, it's finished. And that's really a key difference I see in players of a level of 1000 to 1500. At some point they are able to judge that, and before they are just thinking like a tactic is a nice thing, and if I see it I go for it, without really asking is it good, and thinking kind of naively that tactics are always good, but they are unfortunately not. So I hope I could open your eyes for that perspective a little bit. If you like the video, please like and subscribe. If you want to see more about calculation, let me know in the comments below, and I hope to see you in the next one. Goodbye.